Hi, this is Emily, and this is the M Dash. If you listened to the first episode, thank you for being back here with me. And if this is your first time, I'm really glad you found your way here. You're always welcome. I want to talk today about patience, not the kind we are told to have, but the kind our bodies actually experience. Because patience sounds like a virtue. We were even told it was. But for a lot of people, it doesn't feel virtuous. It feels heavy. It feels tense. It feels like something you have to endure. So let's start here. Patience does not mean punishment. But for many of us, it learned to feel like it does. If you've ever been told to just be patient, and instead of feeling calm, you felt your chest tighten, your jaw clench, or your energy drop, this episode's for you. Because most people do not struggle with patience because they are impatient. They struggle because patience has historically come with disappointment. Think about it. You schedule a doctor's appointment. Not sometime today, a specific time. You show up early, you check in, you sit down. And then someone says, "We'll be right with you." 36 minutes later, you are staring at that awful beige wall, wondering what year it is and what exactly you rearranged your life for. Because when you finally do get called back, what do they say? The doctor will be right with you. That is patience training. And your body learns something in moments like that. It learns that waiting usually means being forgotten or deprioritized or brushed off. So when life asks you to be patient, your body doesn't hear trust. It hears brace yourself. If you work in sales, you know this one well. You are waiting on documents to be signed, waiting on a yes, waiting on an answer, waiting on silence to turn into clarity. Every notification makes your stomach flip. Every delay asks you to hold your breath just a little longer. That's patience. Ironically, that sounds like dating too. But dating does it too. Let's see where this goes. You tell yourself you're open. You put yourself back out there. You go on date after date, not because you're desperate, but because you're hopeful. And somewhere between optimism and effort, you start to feel tired, discouraged, confused, like you're doing the work, but the timing is not meeting you yet. That is also patience. Fitness says it. Trust the process, especially in the new year. When you commit to something new because you want a new outcome, you change the habits, you show up, you do uncomfortable things. And then someone reminds you, this takes time. Translation, patience again. And this can also happen to you if you go through a divorce or after a breakup or even a friendship ends. You often hear people say, let time be time, or time heals all wounds. Again, that's patience. That patience equals delay. Patience equals uncertainty. Patience equals disappointment, which is why waiting doesn't feel neutral. It feels unsafe. And that's not a mindset problem. That's just the nervous system. So here is the question that changed everything for me. Why can't we have joy while we are waiting? Pause here. Let it hang. Why can't we have joy while we are waiting? Because no one ever taught us that part. We were taught how to wait. We were taught how to endure. We were taught how to not get our hopes up. We were taught how to live while things were unfolding. And that is where patience stopped feeling like a virtue and started feeling like punishment. Because patience without permission does feel like punishment. It feels like being told to wait without being told what you're allowed to feel while you do. But patience with permission feels like trust. And permission is where everything changes. When you give yourself permission to laugh while things are still unclear, to enjoy today, even if tomorrow isn't solved, to stop monitoring progress like a scoreboard. Waiting stop feeling like a sentence and starts feeling like space. And that is not bypassing patience. That is patience in practice. Because what you're really doing is giving your nervous system new information. You're telling your body that waiting does not mean danger, that slowness does not mean loss, that nothing bad is about to happen just because the outcome isn't here yet. You gave yourself permission to live inside the unfolding instead of holding on your breath through it. That is not giving up. That is not settling. That is not lowering your standards. That is trust in motion. Let's be honest. Patience is tested in very specific places. IKEA, for example. That is not furniture shopping. That is a spiritual initiation. I've learned this about myself, so I go on Mondays, not because I'm productive, but because I cannot be behind a slow walker in IKEA. I go with a plan because I go for plants and I know exactly where I'm going. And still, someone will stop dead in the aisle like they've just unlocked a childhood memory and need to process it immediately. That's patience. And then there's traffic. Why is everyone suddenly allergic to the gas pedal? You're not late, I'm late. And yet here we are, all of us moving at the speed of reflection. That's patience too. But here's what's funny. Even in those moments, even in IKEA, even in traffic, joy is possible. You don't have to suffer through the wait to prove that you're doing it right. And here's the reflective part, because that's what's actually happening here. It's not about furniture or traffic or slow walkers. It's about control. It's about how uncomfortable it can feel to not be able to move things along at the pace your nervous system prefers. And that's why this idea of permission matters so much. Because the moment you give yourself permission to enjoy the in-between, patience stops feeling like it is being done to you and starts feeling like something you are choosing. And that's a very different experience. It's interesting, actually. If I did a whole episode on permission, it would probably land with the same tone as the episode on patience. Because the moment you pair those two words, permission and patience, everything softens. Be patient on its own can sound like a restriction, but you have permission to be patient. Sounds like relief. It sounds inviting. It sounds like you're not being asked to wait quietly, but to live fully while things are still unfolding. And when you add joy to that, when you say, I'm allowed to enjoy this moment, even though the outcome isn't clear yet, patience stops feeling like delay and starts feeling like trust. Not trust in the outcome, trust in yourself. Because patience isn't belonging, the pause, the almost. It's not about forcing timing. It's about trusting what's building underneath it. And yes, old patterns still whisper. That's not failure. They don't get the mic anymore. And when I say old patterns still whisper, I want to be really clear about what I mean. Because these patterns don't show up as chaos. They show up as commentary. They sound like a quiet checklist running in the background. Have I done enough yet? Am I allowed to feel good about this yet? Should I wait before I say I'm happy? What if this changes? What if this disappears? And what's interesting is that these thoughts usually arrive right when things are actually okay, not falling apart, not urgent, just unresolved, which tells you something important. These patterns aren't reacting to danger. They're reacting to uncertainty, and uncertainty used to cost you something. So the pattern learned to stay alert, to stay just a little guarded, to stay a little braced, to keep joy on a short leash. Not because you're pessimistic, but because at some point, hope without protection felt risky. So the pattern adapted. It learned to say, let's not celebrate too early. Let's not relax yet. Let's wait until we're sure. And again, this doesn't sound like fear. It sounds like being smart. It sounds like being measured. It sounds like being responsible. But over time, those quiet cautions turn into rules. Rules are how old patterns try to help. They create structure around uncertainty. Rules like, don't get attached. Don't assume this will last. Don't let yourself enjoy this too much. Don't stop monitoring yet. And when life asks you to be patient, those rules tighten, because patience plus rules often equals self-withholding. You end up waiting and restricting yourself at the same time, waiting for clarity, waiting for permission that never actually comes from the outside. That's when patience starts to feel heavy, not because waiting is wrong, but because you're making yourself smaller while you wait. And this is why permission matters so much, because permission doesn't add more rules. It removes them. Permission says you don't have to earn rest by staying tense. You don't have to delay joy until uncertainty disappears. You don't have to keep your nervous system on standby just in case something goes wrong. Permission interrupts the pattern that stays while waiting requires withholding. And when that interruption happens, patience stops feeling like endurance. It starts feeling like a choice. Choice to soften. Choice to live. Choice to stay present without gripping to the outcome. So when I talk about permission, I'm not talking about being careless or lowering standards or pretending you don't want more. I'm talking about giving yourself a different experience of waiting, one where patience and joy are allowed to coexist. And if you need that permission spelled out, I'll share my permission list. Here it is. You're allowed to be calm and still want more. You're allowed to feel joy without earning it first. You're allowed to not know what's next while trusting you're on the right path. You're allowed to stop reading signs and let your body catch up. Patience isn't about waiting quietly for life to start. It's about staying open while it's unfolding. And if this season feels slow, maybe it's not a delay. Maybe it's an invitation. I want to share something personal before we close. Everything I share today isn't something I figured out once and now I've got it mastered. This episode is a reminder to me too, because I notice that when I hit play on my own life, a part of me immediately wants the ending. I want to know how it turns out. I want the clarity. I want the resolution. And when I don't have it yet, it's when patience gets tested. I used to be a runner. I ran a lot of races, including marathons. And one of the biggest mistakes I watched people make was what happened right at the starting line. The gun would go off and people would take off fast. Adrenaline high, heart racing, trying to win the race in the first mile. But I never ran like that. Because when you're staring down 26 miles, you don't sprint at the start. If you do, you burn out. You taper off, you lose your rhythm. So I learned to start soft, to start slow, to respect the distance. And the longer I live, the more I realize life works the same way. Every new season has a starting line, a book, a relationship, a creative project, a new version of yourself. And I'll be honest, when I put my book out in the world in November, a part of me wanted everything to happen so fast. I thought if people see it, they'll buy it. And I thought my social media, gosh, if every single person that follows me bought it, I've made it. And something big would happen. And when it didn't unfold that way, patience got tested. But what I'm learning now is the difference between waiting and running the race with intention. Soft and slow isn't a lack of belief. It's respect for the distance. This season isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about trusting the pace. And that's why I end each episode with a blessing. Not because things are finished, not because everything is figured out, because you deserve kindness in the middle of the process. This isn't me speaking at you. It's me speaking with you, learning how to stay present while something is still becoming, learning how to let joy exist without rushing the ending. So I want to share a blessing with you. If you didn't join my first episode, blessings are what you would probably call poems. They're what I write in a voice when I want to say them out loud or quietly to myself, when I want to return back to myself. And I want to end each episode with one for you. So today I share Blessing of the Patience. May you stop treating waiting like a test you can fail. May your body learn that slowness is not danger. May you let joy exist before clarity arrives. May you rest your nervous system from scanning for proof. May patience feel less like endurance and more like space that is holding you. You are not behind. You are not being punished. You are allowed to be here while life unfolds. Patience is not about waiting quietly for life to start. It is about staying open while it is already happening. Maybe it is an invitation to soften, to trust, and to let yourself live before the answers arrive. My name is Emily, and this is the M-, and you are always welcome here.